In the heart of their own village, a small farming community surrounded by endless stretches of cocoa farms and yam fields, life moved at a gentle pace. The early morning sun bathed the landscape in golden hues, the scent of fresh air, the scent of fresh dew hanging in the air as birds chirped melodiously from the trees. It was a world where simplicity reigned, and the rhythmic patterns of the seasons guided life at the villages. This was the world young Adeoti knew and loved, a world filled with warmth, family, and routine. Adeoti was a bright and energetic boy of just 8, with a mischievous smile that could light up the room and eyes full of wonder for the world around him. His days were filled with a kind of innocent joy that only childhood could bring. He spent his mornings helping his father, Ade, tend to their small but prosperous cocoa farm, running among the trees and learning the secrets of farming passed down through the generations. In the afternoons after school, he would play with his friends in the village square, their laughter echoing through the open air. Adeoti's father, was a man of great stature and reputation in the village. He was hardworking, a respected cocoa farmer who never hesitated to help others. His hands, calloused from years of toiling in the fields, were a testament to his dedication to his family. Ade's wife, Ajoke, was equally admired, a woman of gentle spirit. She was known for her kindness and her business acumen, selling sandals and children's clothing at the village market. Her trips to the bustling city to restock her goods always brought back stories and treasures that fascinated Adeoti. Together, Ade and Ajoke created a home filled with love, warmth, and a sense of security. In the evenings, the family would gather for dinner, sitting around a small table as the comforting smells of roasted yam and spicy fish stew filled the air. Adeoti loved these moments, listening to his parents' stories while they laughed and shared their hopes for the future. His mother would often speak of sending him to school in the city, where he could get an education that would allow him to achieve great things. He would dream about the city life, tall buildings, wide roads, and schools with playgrounds as large as the village square. Bade, Ade's younger brother, added to these dreams. Bade, who lived in the city with his wife, Agony, and their children, John and Jane, visited occasionally, always bringing an air of excitement with him. He would arrive in his old car, their children running out to greet him as soon as they heard the familiar rumbles of his engine. Adeoti adored his uncle, who seemed larger than life with his tales of the city, of endless streets lined with shops, markets bustling with people, and opportunities that seemed boundless. Bade had promised many times that one day he would take Adeoti to the city, a promise that filled Adeoti's night with endless dreams. But life, as it often does, took a tragic turn. One sunny morning, Ajoke kissed Adeoti on the forehead, a warm smile as bright as ever, as she prepared for another trip to the city to buy goods for the market. She waved goodbye to Ade and Adeoti, telling them she would return soon with treats from the city. Adeoti watched a car disappear down the dusty road, not knowing that this would be the last time he would see his mother alive. The afternoon brought a sudden change in weather. Dark clouds rolled in, and by evening, a heavy rain had begun to fall. The downpour seemed ominous, as if nature itself was mourning before the tragedy even struck. A neighbor arrived at their door, drenched and trembling. Her face was pale, her voice barely a whisper as she delivered the terrible news. Ajoke's car had collided with a truck on the highway. There were no survivors. Adeoti's world came crashing down. In one day, everything he knew, everything that had brought him joy, was torn away. He clung to his father, sobbing uncontrollably as Ade held him. Though his own heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces, Ade tried to be strong for his son, but grief overwhelmed him. The once robust man who commanded respect in the village began to wither under the weight of his sorrow. His health, already delicate from years of hard work, began to deteriorate rapidly. The light in Ade's eyes dimmed, leaving him behind the shadow of the man he once was. The village, once filled with laughter and life, became a place of despair for Adeoti. The villagers who had once admired Ade now whispered among themselves, casting pitying glances toward the boy as they walked past the empty fields. As Ade's health continued to decline, the farm became neglected. The once beautiful cocoa trees began to wither, their fruit stolen by opportunistic villagers who saw an easy chance to take what wasn't theirs. Adeoti, now only 8, had to grow up faster than any child should. He took on the responsibility of the household, waking early to care for the farm, though his small hands struggled with the tasks. After school, he would try to sell what little produce they had left at the market, standing beside the very spot his mother once sold her goods. His nights were spent beside his father's sick bed, watching over him with a kind of care and patience that no child should ever have to give. As time passed, the inevitable happened. One fateful morning, Adeoti woke to find his father had passed away quietly in the night, his body finally giving in to the weight of his grief and illness. The loss of his mother had been unbearable, but losing his father as well broke something deep inside of Adeoti. He was now completely alone in the world that had once been filled with warmth and love. The funeral was small and somber. Only a few villagers attended, offering their condolences with hollow words. Adeoti stood by his father's grave, staring at the freshly turned earth, his face expressionless, as the last of his family was laid to rest. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting long shadows across the graveyard. In that moment, the world felt too big, too empty for a boy who had lost everything. For days after the burial, Ade wandered aimlessly around the village. He no longer played with his friends, no longer attended school. He simply existed, his heart too heavy for joy, his spirit too burdened for hope. He would sit for hours by the cocoa trees, staring at the dried up crops that had once been his father's pride. It was during this time of despair that Bade, Adeoti's uncle, returned to the village. He had not been present for the funeral. His work in the city had kept him away. But when he heard of Ade's death, he rushed to Iran to fulfill the promise he had made so long ago. Bade arrived in the village just as dusk was falling. The familiar rumble of his car reaching Adeoti's ears. But this time, there was no running out to greet him, nor excitement in the air. Bade found Adeoti sitting alone by the remains of the farm. His small body hunched over, his eyes dull. He knelt down beside his nephew, placing a gentle hand over his shoulder. "Adeoti," Bade said softly, his voice filled with regret and sorrow. I am sorry I wasn't here, but I've come now to take you to the city, just like I've promised." For a moment, Adeoti didn't respond. He had heard too many promises lately, and none of them had held true. But something in Bade's eyes Something genuine, something filled with love, gave him the strength to believe again. Bade gathered Adeoti's few belongings, and together they left the village. As they drove away from the only home Adeoti had ever known, the fields and trees disappearing into distance, Adeoti looked back one last time. The pain of the loss was still fresh. But for the first time since his mother's death, a glimmer of hope sparked within him. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that he wouldn't face it alone. In the city with Bade and his family, Adeoti would begin a new chapter. What would Adeoti do in the city? What did the future look like? Let's find out in the next episode. Now we have a question waiting for you on this episode in the comment section. Kindly check it out and drop your answer. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please remember to do that. Give this video a thumbs up. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye for now.